I'm welcome again. We hope, Robina, you'll stay with us. The idea that technology can be a panacea and reach everyone, and certainly technology has been seen as the answer to ensuring that children continue to be taught during the pandemic. There are obvious difficulties, even in the even when you're talking to someone who is half a mile away from you. But sometimes where there are issues with connectivity, it doesn't always work. But we are trying this hybrid. It does have great potential, and I'm very grateful there are people in the room and online. So I'm Jo Westbrook. I'm a co-director of the Centre for International Education with Linda Morris. I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Robina Cheyuni, who is a trained secondary school teacher of English, like myself, and Julia Sutherland, who's in the corner. And she was in the classroom in Uganda for 5 years, after which Robina joined Makerere University's School of Education as a secondary English language and literature teacher trainer. She left in 2017 to do full-time work on reading interventions in Uganda's primary schools, writing materials and training teachers to teach in local language and English literature. Recently, she's also written textbooks for the new secondary school curriculum in Uganda. I also know that Robina has been training very large groups of teachers, and I'm sure you'll want to come back to that, who have forgotten how to teach through COVID, who have been teaching online or not. And part of her role has been to have a refresher course for teachers to learn again how to be in the classroom, which I find fascinating. So, Robina, you're very welcome. We can hear you, if not see you. We have your PowerPoint. The format, as always, is that Robina will talk on literacy instruction in multilingual contexts, sociolinguistic realities, for about 35 minutes, and then there'll be a 10-minute Sussex buzz where we'll ask people to discuss the presentation in small groups and come up with questions and queries, and then we'll have questions posed to Robina, both from people online, please put things in the chat, and to you here in the room. So Robina, when you're ready, if you want to go on to slideshow, do start.
Okay, thank you, Jo. Thank you, everyone, colleagues, friends. As I have been introduced, as coming from Uganda, I'd like to start with Uganda. I don't know if several of you have been to Uganda. I know one or two might have been, but I chose to start here so that we can talk about these sociolinguistic realities with some knowledge, some information about Uganda. This is how Uganda sits, between Sudan, the Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo, Tanzania, and Kenya to the east. And we are talking about 42 million people and 63 languages. This is what the Constitution recognizes, 63 languages. And they are from these large language groups, Bantu, Nilotic, and Sudanic. And sometimes the academics will say 41 living languages. Sometimes it will be brought down to say 57. But even that begins to show you what sort of challenges we would be looking at when we are trying to develop literacy for children in primary schools, especially because that is where the focus is. But also, I would like to say something very quickly about the borders. Apart from all these districts that you see, and we cannot say that there is a language to every district, but in fact, the language topography is as rich as the map suggests. We could talk of regional languages, so that we can talk of Runyankore Ruchiga around here. We could talk of Runyoro, Rutoro, and already you can hear that sounds like two languages put together. But sometimes the academics, for instance, at Makerere University, will say that that is Runya Chitara. Bring Runya Chitara, which might suggest that it is one language, but the speakers recognize their languages as four, not one. We do have teachers and children crossing the borders from, say, the Congo to come to school in here. And some cross the border in the south to come to school here. We have a large body of refugee children who come from Sudan, southern Sudan, to school here. They've been learning, they speak Arabic, they speak other languages, Nue and other, and yet in school here, they are exposed to English as medium of instruction in upper primary. But in fact, if they are fortunate to go to a government-aided school, they will be exposed to the area local languages here, which is actually, and further down, it is Lango. So you can see the plight of such children. They are displaced from their country, but they also have to cope with them, other disadvantages of language in school, to the point that sometimes there's been suggestions of teachers from the southern Sudan coming to teach in these schools just so that these children are provided for. But I'll leave some of the things to your imagination or for the discussion later. I would like to go to some of the...
Robina,
yes,
do
please.
you want to go on to slideshow and we'll have the larger screen?
Oh, yes.
If you go to slideshow, okay. And then,
right.
There we go.
Is that better now?
Yeah.
Okay. So these are some of, here I tried to summarize the demands that we face for recognizing where we are working, so that if we can work more effectively, but also so that others know what they are walking into if they have to come to join the forces that work on teaching children how to read and write in the early years. We are all targeting bilingual literacy so that children can read in their own languages and in English, English being our second language, but also our policy being teaching children literacy in the home language. And I will be saying home language, area local language. It is very difficult to think even of mother tongue because of the diversity here. We are all aiming to do literacy, to use people who are experts in literacy instruction so that they bring in their technical input. We have to think of the significance of mother tongue education in the early grade, in the early grades of primary school, and placing the emphasis on reading and writing. And we have to think of how to make sure that when we claim mother tongue instruction, it is done right, because we have teachers teaching in areas where in fact they do not speak the local area language, because teachers are supposed to teach wherever they are deployed. In fact, in northern Uganda, northeastern Uganda, there are many teachers who have to teach children to read and write in Ngakarimojong, which is the area local language, but they do not speak the language themselves. So you can see the disadvantage of both the child and the learner and the teacher. And we have to think of our language policy, which I have just summarized. How do we develop materials, train teachers, follow them up in the classroom, assess reading and writing, and reach out with our feedback to people who are working in the classroom, but also those who are interested. And we have to, I hope I will be able to allow all of us to think, to reflect on sensitivity while you're working, while you're
Oh no. Robina, we can't hear you. Oh dear. Yeah. Yeah. Robina, we can't hear you. Okay. Well, it's the connectivity. We'll just have to wait. She obviously knows that it's cutting out. This is very familiar, I'm afraid. Yeah, do get tea and coffee. Hi, Robina. Hello, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay, you disappeared.
Can you? I think there was a disturbance here on power supply. Yes,
Okay.
there was a disturbance. Okay, and
so if you want to go back to sharing your screen and the slides, I think you're on the second one.
Yes,
Great. There we go.
Is that large enough for all of us to see?
Well, if you go onto slideshow, if that's all right, it just makes it slightly bigger.
Okay.
Wonderful.
So,
great to have you back. Do keep going.
Okay, and very quickly, the literature asserts that learning to read in a familiar language is key for a child's development of foundational reading abilities. But I'd also like to add writing, because our target is to make sure that they can read, both read and write, but also think in a language that aids their learning, not only in reading and writing, but also in other areas of the curriculum. And a lot of our emphasis has been a lot on teaching children to decode, teaching oral language development, teaching comprehension. And these are not the ways that teachers worked before. Teachers would write sentences on the chalkboard and tell children to read them. There wasn't any curriculum, reading curriculum. And every teacher worked in the way that they found themselves able to. Now that there is this focus, many teachers have not simply to understand the methodology, but also to demonstrate that in fact the children are learning, and that is not easy for them. As I said, when we talk of mother tongue, it is often difficult to think of mother tongue when people are moving from one area to another, when teachers have to teach in a language that they cannot read. But all the same, we're looking for mastery so that the children can cope with, for instance, the thematic curriculum. Children are taught to read around themes. Our home, our school, things in our school, people in our school, activities in our school. And there is a selection of vocabulary that they should learn. There are there is a selection of structures that they will need to work with to talk about their home, write about their home. And that is in the first 3 years of primary school. When they get to the 4th year of primary school, they leave instruction through the local language and learning English as a subject, and they must move on to learning to read and write in English, but also to learn the other areas of the curriculum in English. How do we make sure that they have enough English as a language to cope with learning in the curriculum? That is a big question. And what the recent reading and writing interventions have brought into curriculum development is a discussion of how much local language should be left available for the children to lean on, so that if they do not understand English, they can resort to local language, especially for explanation that helps them to understand what is delivered in the curriculum. And is 4 years of learning to read and write in local language enough for them to benefit in ways that will ensure that they can cope with instruction in English? How much English can, how are teachers able to cope with the instruction in English? And often teachers say that they feel more comfortable teaching in English, delivering instruction in English, than they do delivering instruction in the local language. That could be a useful point for us to discuss, because maybe they feel more comfortable delivering instruction in English because the languages that they speak and the languages that the learners speak have not developed the technical terms that they could put before the learners, or maybe because for a long time they've been using English. There may be different reasons. I'd like to say something very quickly about us, the implementers of literacy instruction. Usually I say to myself, and I try to argue with others, that we are in an active participant position, knowing literacy, but also doing literacy instruction, and always being careful to take in the meaning, what it is, what it means working where we are. We have sometimes the reading and writing interventions have been mistaken for the thematic curriculum and transition curriculum. Teachers are often confused, with this approach. They think that this is a replacement of the thematic curriculum, which is the national curriculum, or the transition curriculum, which comes in the 4th year. And how to put things right is a huge task. How do you tell teachers that, in fact, reading and writing instruction are coming as support to the delivery of the thematic curriculum? We work with language boards and language panels, which are part of the structures of the National Curriculum Development Center. And we have worked with the speech communities, because unless the speech communities validate the orthographies of their languages, we cannot write materials. Unless the language boards say, yes, this in fact is how we speak our languages, and so your materials are valid, we cannot send the materials out. They will not be approved for the system. And language panels, yes, a structure of National Curriculum Development Center. The language experts are recognized by the speech communities, by the cultural leaders, as the ones who should write the languages. So you can see how sensitive these things are. Then when we work with Curriculum Development Center, we must go through the Teachers College, because we are dealing with instruction, and we must train the teacher. We must, in fact, integrate early grade reading, for instance, and writing into the college curriculum so that the teacher comes out of college prepared to teach the way that government has decided that children should learn to read and write. There's something that some of you may have heard of, the teacher development and management system, which for some time was inactive. We have to work to revitalize that, because the coordinating center tutor, who is a tutor at the teachers college, but has to do so many, to engage in so many activities that are outside the college, in fact, with the community, with the teacher, with the school management committee. We have to be sure that, that this tutor understands the methodology and will support the teachers. But also the local government education departments and the Central Ministry of Education are key players. This is what we've been able to do because of the sensitivities that we have developed. We have contributed to policy through helping the Basic Education Department of the Ministry of Education and Sports to develop the National Literacy and Numeracy Improvement Strategy. Now, when we first started in one of the projects funded by USAID, Ministry, Basic Education asked us to develop the language policy, a language policy for Uganda, and we couldn't. So we offered to develop a literacy and numeracy improvement strategy, which had to go through several stages of approval before it was adopted as a national strategy. And as I said before, we worked with a National Curriculum Development Center to establish 12 language boards, because much as these are required structures, because the language boards are the ones that are mandated to promote use of our local languages in schools, to write, to approve materials written in those languages. The language boards did not actually exist when we walked in Egypt, but there was no record of how it should be written. And we developed reading materials for teaching reading and writing, both teachers' guides and primers. And I need to clarify that when I say we, there has been projects. First, health and reading program. So done. Now the fourth project is what is on now, integrated child and youth development activity. Still doing largely early grade reading, but also asking the so besides writing materials, developing materials, we've had to train teachers at different levels, master trainers, lead trainers, and we take these from the force, the teaching force. They do not come from outside the system, even though the funding is provided from an external source. We must have the national system. We also follow teachers in the classroom to give support so that the local government, the district local teams see what can be done and how it should be done, and by equipping inspectors the district because the EGRA tool is progressive, and what we've done is taken it and used it in other languages after review, after
Robina, we're losing you again. Robina,
suit the local. So that's, can you hear me now?
yeah, we've lost you several times. We can hear you now. It keeps coming and going.
There are interruptions on the power supply, but can you hear me now?
Yeah, but you come and go.
Okay.
But
right.
Let's just keep on going. I'm
Okay.
worried about time, and also just to, you're there. EGRA was, in case people missed it, it's early grade reading assessments.
Yes.
Big assessments that have come from RTI in America. They're very dominant in many sub-Saharan African countries, a very particular way. Sorry, Robina, I'm talking on your behalf, but we did
all right.
miss you there. But yes, do
right.
go on.
Okay. And here are some payoffs. We have noted that there is recognition by the Ministry of Education of the early grade reading, the potential of the early grade reading program to improve reading and writing instruction, but also of the potential for these interventions to impact the system, because teachers are already reporting that they do understand now how reading and writing should be taught, which they didn't before. Of course, that doesn't mean that they have no challenges, but they're also reporting that there is excitement amongst them and the learners, because something that we did not know we had brought into the system is improvement of attendance. When the materials were taken into schools, learners were excited and school attendance improved, because they wanted, they wanted to look, they wanted to touch, they wanted to read from the materials. And because learner attendance improved, teacher attendance tended to improve. If the children are there waiting for you, you must be there. And teachers are reporting faster development of reading and writing acquisition, but also we are getting more parents into schools to talk about their children's learning. And our observation is that it is because of the use of local language in reading and writing. That is a video that can be watched later. But we also need to note that the large class size is a factor that works often against the payoffs. Teachers are using a new methodology, and they have to cope with large numbers in class of children who are at different levels of attainment in literacy. Some children cannot open their books to a page that the teacher says, because even though the teacher writes it on the chalkboard, the children cannot, much as they might say 15 when they're counting in the numeracy lesson, to open their books to page 15 is a different question. Indoor and outdoor learning spaces are usually inadequate. Furniture, and this is interesting because when a child's sitting posture is wrong, much as you might have stationery, much as there might be a teacher in class, there are issues, and usually an inadequate number of teachers, because yes, we have trained teachers, but teacher transfers are the factor that dictates how many teachers there will be. You have trained this teacher to teach P4, reading and writing in local language and English. Once they are transferred and replaced by a teacher who has not been trained, there are issues. And the teachers that trained often find it difficult to pass on.
We lost you, Robina. Robina? Yeah. We have a video to watch if while she's coming back. Can you hear us, Robina?
I think I'm right. Everyone has been usually critiqued. Yeah. I just want to review its use in Northern Nigeria, which is pretty bad.
And what are the reasons given in Nigeria?
So I just opened it when I was listening to this, but it is about, kind of.
There,
Oh,
something happened, and I could see that I was disconnected. Also, we
you need to share your screen again, Robina.
Okay.
Can
you see the screen now?
Yeah.
Okay.
We were interested
So,
in. Yeah. Go on.
Sometimes teachers associate the implementing partner with prestige, because this is an external partner to government of Uganda. And so instead of getting down to teaching literacy, sometimes we catch teachers, the term that is used here is posing. They will go and say, I work with RTI, I work with USAID. Or they are labeled by colleagues, the USAID teachers, the RTI teachers, and now it is the EDC teachers, Education Development Center teachers. And that alone it does block the system, because we do not see the results coming as fast as we want them to come. Okay, and sometimes we see individuals fighting for power, authority. You may be called into a discussion where or even an individual is putting up an argument that National Curriculum Development Center should not develop materials, that this is the mandate of associations, and you cannot be speaking for NCDC because you're not their employee, but you are not exactly speaking for RTI or EDC either, because you are really you're working with Ministry of Education, you're supporting Ministry of Education. So sometimes those issues cause delays, and the implementer may occasionally be dragged into having to be, you become an agent of information dissemination, because there are other partners also doing literacy instruction. Now, where do you stop? What exactly is your identity becomes an issue. But because we work with language boards, and language boards have the mandate to work with NCDC, we find we are able to stand the ground and we find ourselves able to stand outside of these power struggles, especially when sometimes the individual or the association is pushing for a legacy. They fear that the materials they have developed will not be valid once the materials in the system are the ones that are emphasized. And misconception of language instruction not being actually literacy also do deter progress. And usually these occur because some people have a voice, because they also have the money, and they also prefer, say, private school to public school, sometimes because they prefer that their children are the ones that will get the places at the good secondary school. And so they want to hold the other children back. And they fear that because early literacy instruction is happening in the local language, these children who go to public school especially will gain advantage. So they also are found sometimes to put up their fight. So we are often drawn back into the debate, which I consider we have had long enough for people to recognize the benefits, but we must be drawn into it to explain the benefits of mother tongue literacy instruction, so that we close the gaps. When we've worked with the communities and the language boards, we have kind of posed a threat to those to communities whose languages have not been, orthographies have not been developed for their languages. And then this, of course, is associated with tribe, and the sensitivities here are about exclusion, are about inclusion, and how to stay away from such perceptions is often difficult. I speak a language which was top on the list for being included in the very first intervention, 2012, 2013. And most of my time is devoted to materials development. So sometimes the perception is that I am including my language and excluding others. And it is not easy always to explain this. But I do consider that we do have some opportunities, because we have worked grounding the interventions in the people's culture. We can invest this towards building trust among the people, so that because they trust government and government's partners, they can change their attitude towards local language instruction and local language instruction for literacy development. And so then we have to use this to exploit this for parents, for instance, to be involved in their children's literacy development and in learning in other areas of the curriculum. Also, I see an opportunity of teacher motivation. When teachers respond, give us feedback to on the interventions, I trust that this is a way to get them to grow communities of practice in which they can support each other, in which the coordinating center tutors, the master teachers that we have groomed, can then bring literacy instruction down to the zonal level or to the school level, so that the implementer or the technical expert doesn't always have to be way higher than where they are, which sometimes fails implementation. We've one other opportunity that I recommend for us to exploit is the perception of the people now that there are books in the hands of learners, because we have distributed books at the ratio of 1:1, and children are able to look at print for reading and writing, which wasn't the case before. And a teacher is available to model for the learners. I feel that this is an opportunity for government and in here working in this space to document the benefits of working the ways we have worked, the challenges that come with the methodology and the processes, and use this evidence to build a case for more partnerships in the more specific areas, because we talk about an intervention, but how about talking about materials development, so that sometimes we focus on that for a long time. How about teacher training, so that we focus on that for a long time, so that the gains can be seen more widely and more impactful. I would like to pause for the groups to happen. I hope that this has given you some insights into literacy development in Uganda, literacy instruction in Uganda. And I do hope you appreciate that diversity. Although I don't want to mourn so long about that diversity, there must be certain opportunities in that diversity as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Robina. Thank you. And despite the fact that we lost you several times, you gave a very comprehensive picture of what is a very complex scenario when you have a lot of different stakeholders. You have the government, you have different funders, you have different implementers who are trying to work out how to get books into children, how to train the teachers. I'm going to, Robina.
Yes, please.
Robina, there was one,
yes.
I'm going to take my authority here as chair. There was a slide that looked really interesting that you went over really quickly, and it was something about the pseudo middle class. And that was the one.
That's a naughty one, I suppose.
Okay, but it just.
Is that it? I think so.
Is that naughty?
Can you see it?
We can see it. It was just very interesting. Perhaps you can just say what perhaps the last bullet point. It just looked very interesting and added another layer of complexity. What was the key point here?
This is what I wanted to explain with there is a class who, because they are privileged, they have social privileges, like they have been educated to a higher level than others. They have they live affluent lives. Their children go to usually private school or the top-notch public schools. They argue that, in spite of what the literature says, they will argue that mother tongue literacy is not, in fact, literacy, okay? And these happen to, they have the advantage of being leaders where they are, maybe in business, maybe in, sometimes in education, by the way. They do not look at these benefits as what is the enabling factor for the disadvantaged children. All they care about is let's say the 10% who already have the advantage, who will find a newspaper at the end of the day bought by dad or mom, who will go back to television and can even make notes from the programs, the news bulletin maybe, or whatever other TV program, who will listen to radio in dad's car as dad drives them to school, who have a teacher, because they are advantaged and more and better motivated, teaches them more effectively. So this group of people, I call them leaders because they are there leading the argument, they are there leading the debate. Because they do not recognize the needs of the majority of children, they drive the debate and they have the advantage of being listened to because they are the ones who are in the fora here. They're the ones who will be invited to a debate. They're the ones who will gradually influence the decisions that lead education provision. But also there is it is a formidable situation because deep down, they have a fear that because you have mother tongue or local language or maybe home language instruction for literacy development, these children may gain an advantage and come closer to their children. So, someone will ask you, for instance, where do you want to put all these children when they learn effectively? They do not recognize that the system has probably enough space to accommodate all these children in secondary school. And maybe they fear that if these children gain the advantage, they will go into the job market where only their children would have benefited. So it's a cycle of beliefs and arguments.
Fascinating. Okay, thank you for that. As I said, it's a very complex picture of how an intervention gets off the ground and its relationship to the ministry and schools and teacher training and producers of literature and the different actors involved.